Hi, everybody. I felt like I needed to make a video because I hadn't made one in a long time, but after seeing what happened to President Trump and his near assassination, it inspired me. I was thinking about what happened to me in my younger years. I had a near death experience, and granted, he didn't die, no, and I'm sure it was a very horrible experience. But I know he came up a changed man, just like a lot of people with near death experiences do. So I'm going to read you my testimony. It's been written a few years ago, and some of it isn't quite as accurate now because I'm a lot further along in life and I'm sick now and not as much in the ability to do the things I did before. But I'm going to let you hear what I said. From my earliest memories, my dream was to get out of an abusive home in the small town where I spent 12 miserable years. I got in a lot of trouble with my tomboy ways and my mercurial temper, but I loved learning. My studies kept me from focusing on the sorrows of my home life. I did my level best to avoid thinking about all the sadness and misery I felt deep inside. It was the 1960s when abuse was rarely talked about at all, and when seldom mentioned, it was in whispers. My dark thoughts and self loathing were buried deep inside. I hid them from everyone, including myself. My teen and young adult years were spent drinking alcohol, smoking pot, drag racing, and playing chicken on the levee. Those were the days of large parties and concerts. My favorite song back then was Love the One You're With. It seemed to everyone that I was happy and full of joy, but in reality, I could barely function. Depression weighed heavily on my young mind, and suicidal thoughts plagued me, but I kept it to myself. I drank heavily, snorted cocaine, I'd take any pill I could get my hands on. Somehow, I managed to get through the days, but I would use amphetamines to stay awake. I was a train wreck waiting to happen. I was raped, beaten, had a gun to my head more than once, lived through 2 deadly car accidents, 2 suicide attempts, and 3 failed marriages. But back during the delivery of my only son, there were complications. And in those horrific moments, all that ravaging pain that I'd been feeling suddenly disappeared. The delivery room began to feel illusory, and before I could fathom what was happening to me, I was out of my body and looking down at it from the ceiling. In seconds, the scene changed, and I had the sensation of weightlessness. My vision started to dim as if I was in total darkness or a tunnel. But then light began to invade that darkness. Its brightness, it was beyond human words, yet it didn't blind me. I was drawn toward that light, and out of that light came a being. It was Jesus or an angel, brighter than the sun, and a tremendous feeling of love and acceptance flooded through me. And then my entire life until that point flashed before my eyes, every moment of it. It was deeply embarrassing to witness some of those moments with that being standing beside me. I felt like a failure, worthless and deserving of hell. But then I was transported to this tranquil, beautiful spot. And as the scene grew closer and closer, I could see a wide river, and beyond that, a dense forest ablaze in riotous fall colors. And then I saw a crowd of people standing near the water's edge, and one by one I searched their faces. Some were relatives I knew who had died when I was just a little girl. Others I didn't recognize, but one spoke to me, and he said, "Thank you for giving me a grandson." I found out later that was my husband's father, who was a pastor and had died. It was a real shock when he told me that later. But when I was in this situation, I didn't know who this was. And the being of light told me, I have to go back. But first, I would be raising my son, and I would live the rest of my life. But that someday soon, I would be back for good with my family and friends. And those moments were the catalyst that forced me to take stock of my life and to make drastic changes. After that awe-inspiring experience, I have found a deep comfort in my faith. I don't need alcohol to dull the pain or bottles of pills that mask the hurts from childhood. I no longer dwell on the past. Yeah, I still have bad days where I feel overwhelmed with sorrow. My eyes can barely hold back the tears. But when those hard times threaten my peace, I turn inward and I meditate and pray. Prayer for me, it's just like a conversation with my daddy, Abba. It's effortless, like breathing for me. My formative years and young adult life seemed like another world. I'm not haunted anymore by my past. I know I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for God watching over me and guiding my steps. I died to that old self, and I'm living now with no fear. Instead, I grow in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. I think you Christians out there know that those are the fruits of the Spirit. I'll leave you with my favorite verse that I think sums up my life and the Apostle Paul's, because he wrote this originally. I have not yet reached my goal, and I am not perfect, but Christ has taken hold of me. So I keep on running and struggling to take hold of the prize. My friends, I don't feel I have already arrived, but I forget what is behind and I struggle for what is ahead. I run toward the goal so I can win the prize of being called to heaven. Philippians 3:12-14. Thank you for listening to me. Goodbye.